Okay, so we're going to do a talk about the tritypes.
Yes.
My name's Gary.
I'm Walter.
And we are definitely not experts in the Enneagram, definitely not experts in the tritype, but I'm very passionate about it.
Yes.
It's something that interests us both a lot. Walter actually introduced me to the Enneagram only a few months ago, so it's definitely new for me. How long have you been interested in the Enneagram for?
I think it's been at least a decade when I was in grad school, and but I've gone in and out of actually like thinking about it. But most recently, I've been really into it.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I think like hopefully at some point we'll make some videos about lots of things regarding the Enneagram, maybe to do with the subtypes, the wings, breaking down song lyrics or music videos, just looking at the different types in general. But one of our favourite things to discuss is the tritype.
Yeah.
And there's not as much content about it as I would have liked. And I'm constantly searching for my tritype, which is 469. And your tritype is?
The 471.
And so I'm just really curious to see whether there's anybody out there that's also looking for tritype content, whether there's any other 471s out there or any other 469s out there. And yeah, we're just excited to drive into a conversation about tritypes.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, how did you come to know that you were a 471?
Yeah, so the tritypes are newer to me. My friend introduced it to me maybe about a year and a half or so ago, but I didn't really think too much about it. I was really into the subtypes and the variants, and I found that really helpful as a social 4 with a stacking of social and then sexual, and knowing that self-pres was the lowest for me, that has been really helpful in my own growth. But I think what really got me really hooked about the tritypes is when you took the tests on Enneagram and the subtypes, and we came out very similar. So Enneagram 4, social, although you have a different stacking. And we're the same Myers-Briggs type, so we're very similar. But
INFP.
INFP,
both INFPs.
But then our experiences of life are so different, similar but very different, and it just seems like the tritypes seem to like really illuminate what those differences might be, because our numbers are very different.
So let's begin with the bit that we definitely have in common, which is like being a 4 as our dominant number. So you know, even regardless of the subtypes, or kind of taking them into account as well, we're both social 4s, and we're also both 4-wing 5s, and both INFPs. And so there was a lot where the core dominant type was very similar. So like, how does that show up the most for you as part of that tritype, with 4 being the dominant number? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, so I think for me, it just means that I am very driven by my emotions. So my emotions are kind of at the core of my being as a 4, and they affect the things that I do and the actions I take and just how I experience life. And so as a social 4, especially just kind of balancing what my role is in the midst of a group, and how to interact with people. Working 2 different jobs is heavily focused on working with people. I'm very acutely aware of who I am and in the midst of a group. And so I've just seen that, especially as a 4, I mean, I don't know if it's because I want to see myself as special and like individual, but I just feel like at work, I embrace things very differently than other people, and sometimes that feels really great. I'm like, oh yeah, I can have different ideas, and I kind of move about in at work in a specific way that's comforting to me. But then at other times it's like, no one understands me. Why is it that it can feel lonely to not have? I don't know of any other 4s in where I work, and so that can be kind of draining to feel like the loner in a lot of ways. So what about you? How do you see the social 4 playing out in your life?
I mean, very similar, just emotions, just so driven by emotions. I'm a singer-songwriter, so if I don't express myself through songs and getting all of my emotions out, I'm always going to be in a bad way. And I've been writing songs since I was 14, and I make decisions based on emotions more than rational logic all the time. So I think that's part of what it is. And definitely that sense of comparison and envy comes in quite a lot. And I guess I always used to just think that everybody feels that to a certain extent. But when I read about the social 4, I had been going through a particularly bad time where I had been comparing a lot, and it was just like looking in a mirror. It was so strong. And that's where it's interesting with the tritypes, because as much as I relate to the next 2 that come in my tritype, the 6 and the 9, the 4 I just feel is the dominant one, especially because of that. I know that that's if it's like the ego trap that I fall into the most, or the one that affects me the most, I feel like it's that one.
So I think we have very similar experiences. I think I have a little bit, I mean, the whole envy and the comparison is part of me, but I think from when talking together, I think I have a much more like abandonment sense, that like this fear of being abandoned, which is also a very 4 thing. I think that may be more of like what plagues me, to more of an extent than you, and vice versa about the comparing and envy. And
I've read about like different things that 4s experience in particular, and fear of abandonment does come up, and the other one that comes up quite a lot is just the fear of being overlooked, the fear of not being chosen, and the fear of being not included in things. There was this really interesting thing that you actually sent me that was like how to deal with the type 4, and I thought the wording was really interesting because it said, please don't not include me. So not even please don't exclude me, but please don't not include me, because I think that feeling of being overlooked is quite strong. But I have read about the abandonment one as well, and that's a really interesting one. I wonder whether it's somehow linked to the stacking, because of your one, the intimate sexual one-on-one is slightly higher up in yours, whereas that's my last one. I don't know why that is, but I have less of a fear of abandonment, and just more of a fear of being overlooked.
And I wonder, I'm just thinking of like our tritypes of, because in my tritype there's the 7, where it's more of like the adventure. I just like going and doing things. I don't feel as inhibited perhaps to just like, I'm gonna jump in, and like I don't know if I really care if other people are joining me or not, but I can get that kind of itch out, I guess, and usually people may or may not come along, and that whereas I wonder, because as we've talked about you being a 4-6-9 and the seeker, of it taking a more to make a decision and more to take action. So I wonder if it gives more time to feel like, oh, I wonder if people are leaving me out or not. Whereas I'm just like, oh, going in. I don't know. That's just kind of what I was just thinking about.
Yeah, we've noticed that difference between us, haven't we? I think like there was sharing such a core dominant number with the 4 and being so similar in our 4-ness. It was really then interesting to be like, oh, but you're like this and I'm like this. So yeah, my 6 definitely makes me hold back, assess the room. Am I safe? Are we good to go? Are you okay? Are you okay? Am I okay? Normally me asking if I'm okay last, but checking that everything's good, and only being able to make a decision once I feel like the checklist has been checked off. and whereas your 7 allows you to jump into things a bit more spontaneously and have fun a bit more and live in the moment a little bit more. Not that it's easy for you to do, because obviously the 4 has a big problem with that. This is another interesting thing about the tritypes, is it allows for these contradictions that do exist on our personality. So you often talk about your 4-7-1 as being this like mixture of contradictions. So like, what does that feel like?
Yeah, it just feels like opposites fighting against each other all the time. So at like a base level of the numbers, like the 4 being emotional, melancholic, the darkness is very much part of our experience. But then the 7 being like an adventurer, but doesn't like the more dark emotions and wants to suppress it. And then the 1 that struggles with having fun and is really focused on like the ethics and what is right versus wrong, whereas the 7 might not really care, it just wants to have fun, and but then it suppresses the 4 that is emotional. So I talk a lot about, like, I'm reminded of that movie Inside Out, of the different emotions that are at the control panel. I think of it as, okay, which number is at the control panel, which number is at the helm right now, because it seems to make a difference. Like I can be a 7 and just jump in, but then if something happens that's emotionally difficult, I just go right into the 4 mode. Like it can happen really quickly.
And that's a roller coaster. That is a roller coaster, because if you're going through something that's really difficult, like your 4 is going to be like, okay, we're going to go the full hog, we're going to go to the depths of this. But if your 7 comes in, but like, I don't want to do that, your 7 will go on this adventure, but at some point there's going to be this huge come down. Because the 4 is going to be like, I'm waiting for you. And so you're going to always have this big crash down.
And if there's any question about whether, like, ethically what to do about something, and if the 1 shows its head or body, since it's the body type, that gets everything into a tizzy, especially with the 4 of like, oh, I don't know, is this like, am I following my values being a huge thing for 4s? Are we being authentic? And so if I don't feel like it's matching my values ethically, then it gets really difficult. So So the thing I think about the tritypes that we like is that extra bit of nuance that it allows you to feel about your personality. Because I have had conversations with people who have taken the Enneagram test and it's come back with their dominant type, and then they've said, okay, it kind of fits here, but it doesn't fit there, and it doesn't seem to add up to my whole personality. And if you kind of compare it to the Myers-Briggs one, for example, there's 16 personalities in that one, whereas on the surface level, the Enneagram only having 9, it doesn't feel at first as if it allows for those nuances. So each of those different kind of things that you can do to add nuance, such as the subtypes, the wings, and then the tritype, it's all just like useful. It's not like a be-all and end-all. It's not like you have to look into it. But I think those who are interested and feel like there's something that hasn't quite been accounted for in your personality type, in your dominant Enneagram type, then I think looking into the tritypes can give you that bit of nuance and that bit of validation about, oh, that's why that conflict in me exists. So with the 4-7-1, like, if there's anybody that is potentially wondering about whether they're a 4-7-1, sometimes I found it really useful to look at people in the public eye on the personality database website, where people have guessed as to who people are. And somebody that's come up as a 4-7-1 is Lady Gaga. And it's been really interesting to discuss the way that she approaches her music and approaches being in the public eye. And I can totally see how she would be a 4-7-1. And what's that experience been like, kind of realizing that somebody that you like
is the same personality type as you.
Yeah, it's really cool to kind of see how different people embody the different embody the tritype, because often the combinations of the 1, 4, and 7 in whatever order it is, according to Katherine, I don't know how to say her last name, Fauvre, who created the tritype, has named it the visionary, and someone who wants to make the world a better place. And so
that feels like Lady Gaga to me.
It definitely does, yeah. Just kind of, as we've talked about her, just kind of her using her music as a platform to create social change, and that's really important to me as well.
When I think of her concerts and like clips that I've seen, it's always been more than just songs. She'll stop her concerts and go on these speeches. She'll deliver a speech for 5-10 minutes sometimes where there's no music, and she'll just be giving this speech about how everybody should feel loved as your basic human right. Nobody should be made to feel ashamed of themselves. And you get that lyrical theme happening in so many of her songs, like Born This Way. There's a reason she wrote Born This Way. She didn't just go, oh, that'd be a nice song. It comes from a deep place, that 4 that feels the pain of having been made to feel ashamed of themselves for things that they cannot control. Then the 1 that wants the social justice of seeing things as right and wrong, that is from what I can tell, and wanting to make a change. And then the 7 that brings a huge sense of fun to it, which of course Lady Gaga does, with the sound of it being, pop music, dance music, the visuals being so creative. There's a huge sense of fun that goes with that, but it's not just fun for the sake of fun. And I think that's probably where she's felt misunderstood sometimes. It's people just looking at her as if she's weird or just out there. And I was just always one of those people who immediately felt like I got it. I was like, I didn't have the language to describe that she's in Enneagram 4, but I was like, oh, she's in pain. Oh. And I think that's why her hardcore fans got it straight away as well. So yeah,
there's something more meaningful. Like there's meaning behind the things that she does, and purpose to it. So as a singer-songwriter, so what do you see as the difference between like a Lady Gaga 471 versus your tritype as a 469? Because I think there are a lot of 469s who are musicians and artists.
469s appear all the time. So according to the personality database website, this is a list of some musicians who are 469s. So you've got Jared Way from My Chemical Romance, and the first thing I think of, they have a song called I'm Not Okay. And in the song, towards the end, he starts saying, no, it's fine, I'm okay. And then changes his mind, I'm not okay. And 469s are all about indecision and not being able to make up your mind. And I have a song called In Doubt. And then I have a song called Glow, which is where I say to someone, please smile, because it makes me like you. And then please don't smile because I don't want to like you anymore. Oh, but please do it again. Oh, but please don't. And it's this constant push-pull and indecision of not knowing what to do in a situation. So yeah, I could definitely see how Jared Way is. With My Chemical Romance, there's just this huge emotion, like crazy emotions with the songs, and he doesn't hold back in his delivery of them. Tyler Joseph from 21 Pilots is another one, and so lyrics from Stressed Out, he says, I wish I found some better sounds that no one's ever heard. That's the 4, like wanting to be unique. I wish I had a better voice that sang some better words. I wish I found some chords in an order that is new, just like seeking something that is unique. This was really important to him. I wish I didn't have to rhyme every time I sang. I was told when I get older all my fears would shrink, but now I'm insecure and I care what people think. Like 469s are just so in their heads about how they are perceived by other people, to the point where it just makes you freeze up and not do anything. And the way that when he's rapping, the thoughts that you feel that are happening so quickly in his head, Sometimes a certain smell would take me back to when I was young. How come I'm never able to identify where it's coming from? 469s are called the seekers because they always have questions. So he's asking questions. How come I'm never able to do this? And he goes so into detail. I'd make a candle out of it if I ever found it, try to sell it, never sell out of it. I'd probably only sell one. It'd be to my brother, because we'd have the same nose, same clothes, homegrown, a stone's throw from a creek we used to roam. But it would remind us of when nothing really mattered. Out of student loans and treehouse homes, we all would take the latter. So there's this feeling that I could definitely relate to of just wanting to go back to childhood, where things just felt so much easier because there were less questions. And as you get older and you have more questions, like with the 469, what you often hear about is questions don't lead to answers, they just lead to more questions. And the older that you get, you're getting more stressed out. So I feel like this song, Stressed Out, is just such a huge 469 song.
It also seems like, I know we've talked about how 4s in general have this sense of having the difference between the real world and like a fantasy, like imaginary place that we retreat to. And I'm listening to these lyrics, and it's is it sort of like that? Like these wishes and desires to have something different. It's kind of like your mind dwelling on that, or like imagining it, picturing it.
Being stuck in the past. He's very nostalgic for the past here, thinking back to when him and his brother were young, making candles just because it was fun. So there's this nostalgia for the past, wanting things to be simpler. Oh my goodness, wanting things to be simpler. And again, my mind has jumped to Avril Lavigne, who is in 964. She has a song called Complicated. Why do you have to go and make things so complicated? Because that, like, we're already complicated enough. And so like I can understand that frustration of like, oh, why is this so complicated? Like, you never feel like you're going to get to an answer. And that song ends on an unresolved chord. And she's just singing no, no, no. I know it's just a pop song to most people, but for me as a teenager, I was listening to this going, this is my soul. I just felt like I was being reflected back to. It wasn't just a pop song to me. It was something much, much more. And I've always been very curious as to how some people become like really hardcore fans of somebody, and Avril Lavigne is one of those artists that gets these hugely hardcore fans, and then other people will be a kind of, oh, I can take it and leave it, Skater Boy's fun, Girlfriend's fun. But the people who are really into it, I think, my theory is that they recognize some part of themselves in her lyrics. So she has a song called Anything But Ordinary, and she's a teenager asking these questions. Is it enough to love? Is it enough to breathe? Somebody rip my heart out and leave me here to bleed. Is it enough to die? Somebody save my life. I'd rather be anything but ordinary, please. It's such a 4 song, like needing to be unique, and then the 6 asking all these questions. So yeah.
Which I find really interesting, because now as I listen to you, I'm thinking there's something about these songs, the 469 songs that you've been quoting, that are very like specific to the person and their experience of life, which you feel like you can connect to. And I have vestiges of connecting to these songs as well. But it doesn't seem as like deeply as you. But then like the 471 seems kind of more of like this global, like macro level of like, we want this world to be a different place. And so it's just a more like broader message to kind of encompass as many people as possible, perhaps.
I think that's a really interesting distinction, that global thing versus the personal thing, and micro versus macro. Because for better or for worse, I'm definitely more interested in the micro. I wish I could be more interested in the macro. I think it might be the 6. It's just this huge fear that I'm never going to be intelligent enough to understand politics and what's really going on in the world. And I just feel like I have such questions already about what's going on here. It's like I haven't got enough room to take it on. But that's really interesting, because you've related to some of my songs that are 469 songs and applied them to a more global thing. So for example, I have a song called Make the Pain Go Away, which I wrote about a very personal experience. But when you listen to that song and sing it, you're connecting with, it was almost like it's this prayer for the world.
Yeah.
And you're thinking about it in a much more global way, which is really interesting.
Yeah. I see that as like the 471 perhaps of like, they say that we're the triple frustrated types of like, we're frustrated that the world isn't the way that we want it to be. And so I think I can take lyrics like that and then make it into this like the world can be a better place, like make the pain go away, or Lady Gaga's Born This Way, like it's just no matter what race, all the different things that gender, sexuality, all the different categories, like this song that she wrote can encompass everyone. And so I think that my brain is oriented in that way. But it's also confusing in the sense of like the 4 is also the individualist or the, and so I think even then there's this like push-pull of like the macro and the micro being in this head and trying to figure out my place in the world in the midst of like trying to make this a better place. Or
I think a big drive for it comes from that 4 who just understands on such a deep level how painful things can be, on emotionally feeling that pain. And so whereas the 469 then just keeps going inward and more questions, and the 9 kind of doesn't want to rock the boat. The 9 finds it quite hard to express anger, whereas I think the 1 is a bit more like, if it's got bad, I will stand up and I will try to do something about this. I definitely see that in Lady Gaga, but it all begins with feeling the pain in the first place.
Yeah, which is interesting though, because I think 1s can sometimes suppress their anger, suppress their emotions. They want to be just, my understanding at least, is a little more matter of fact, a little more... and which goes against the 4,
right? Yeah,
of like, wait, I have lots of emotions, and I'm trying to figure this out. But yeah, I think it's just kind of, it's fascinating to me, just the even the little nuances of like how to embrace music and songs and how our tritypes are expressed in that way. Are there
any other 471s that you've come across who you would kind of find interesting? So Yoko Ono. So I remember looking this up before, and the first thought that came into my head was the Christmas song that she did with John Lennon, Happy Christmas, War is Over. So it was very social justice led. So the 1 I feel like was really in the driver's seat for that song. War is over if you want it, is the lyrics. So the lyrics to Happy Christmas, War is Over by John Lennon and Yoko Ono. So happy Christmas, let's stop all the fight. You know, to say such a statement like that is quite strong. Let's stop. Kind of a directive, a very direct statement. What have we done? This is Christmas, and what have we done? But then it says, we hope you have fun. The near and the dear one, the old and the young. That feels like the 7. Just like, okay, let's write a happy Christmas song. But while we're writing a happy, fun Christmas song, let's also write about social justice. And let's hope it's a good one without any fear. I think it's the 4 that understands the fear the most. Because 4s are always fearful. And so honestly, it doesn't surprise me at all that Yoko Ono would be a 471, because I feel her influence on that song. It wouldn't surprise me at all if she was the one who talked John into it, saying we should write a Christmas song that says war's over if you want it. Like we can change things.
Yeah.
That feeling of we can change things. I don't have that feeling. I would never write an anti-war song. It's not because I don't want war to end, of course I do, but I just don't have that one, I'm going to tell you what I think is right and wrong in me.
Yeah.
I'm more like, What am I doing wrong? 6.
Well, this is interesting because as we're talking about this, I think a lot about the 8, which I kind of see more of like the social justice, like sticking up for what they believe is an injustice in the world, whether it's social justice or not, but just justice in general. So I don't know if it's like this combination of the 1, 4, and 7 that makes this kind of like social justice focus, perhaps. I don't know. That's just something I was thinking about.
I don't think it always would look like social justice. It just happens to with Lady Gaga and Yoko Ono. Like, how does it show up in your life?
Well, I just have a very distinct way of how I feel like the world should be, where it sounds kind of naive, but this world where we all treat each other kindly and with respect, and we're all equal no matter what, but knowing that is not the case, and so fighting for people who are more of the underdogs. So 4, 6, 9 being the seeker, and you tell me if this is your experience or not, but it's very much going deep within, like going in deeper, more and more. And so, and this understand that the answer lies within. Would that be a truthful thing, or like that you'll eventually find it?
I don't feel like there's a confidence that the answer is within.
Okay.
But we keep searching. But we also look outside of ourselves as well. But we're just constantly asking questions. We're constantly worried what other people think of us. But then I think the 4 that has such a sense of unique identity keeps bringing it back to us. Like, that's what makes us feel better and worse at the same time. Like, we don't want to be exactly the same as everyone else. But I think the 6 and the 9 have this feeling of not wanting to rock the boat, and sometimes try to blend in so as not to upset other people. But then the 4 is like, but I am unique, and they are battling each other as well. But yeah, to come back to what you were just saying about having this vision of what the world should be like. I'm just looking at Alanis Morissette here. She's one of my favourite songwriters ever. She's not a 4, 6, 9 like me, but she is a 4, 6, 1. So she's like this combination of you and I. And she has a song called Utopia. So in the song, she's visualizing what she thinks the world could be like a perfect vision of the world. We'd gather around, all in a room, fasten our belts, engage in dialogue. We'd all slow down, rest without guilt, not lie without fear. We would stay and respond and expand and include and allow and forgive and enjoy and evolve and discern and inquire and accept and admit and divulge and open and reach out and speak up. This is utopia. This is my utopia. This is my ideal, my end in sight. This is my nirvana, my ultimate. And then she just keeps describing what this vision is like in her mind, which I feel is a little bit like what you've got there. I think that must be the one, because that's what you have in common with her that I don't have. Because I'm not sure that I would write a song like that. But I love it because the 1 helped her present this vision of what the world could be like. And I'm like, oh, I wouldn't have thought of that. But I feel the emotions that the 4 and the 6 had. So I relate to it massively, and you probably relate to it on an emotional level as well because of the 4. But then I think you might relate to it almost even more than I would, that song, because of it just presenting this vision of what the world could be like. Yeah.
And so that was what I was wondering a little earlier, of like, I love those beautiful descriptions of utopia, like what world could look like. But then to be like disappointed over and over and over again, and just feeling like, wow, this is this is never going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
That I know for myself, I can get into really, really dark spaces. And with my 4 leading my my tritype, that can get really dark. Because it can be like, well, I find that hope can be very tenuous for me at times of like, this is what I want the world to look like. And we're so far away from it that like it just feels sometimes hopeless and that it can't grab onto anything. Whereas that's why I was like, wow, I wonder if 469s, you're at least seeking, you like, there's more to uncover or more to discover and maybe even look inward to find it. Where sometimes I'm like, I don't even know where this is going to come from. I think the only thing that kind of I think what keeps me going is my faith and my spirituality and my belief in God. I think that's helpful for me because otherwise I don't know what else. It could be. My emotions go up and down. As someone who has like a bipolar disorder, I've wondered that too, of like this roller coaster feeling that we were talking about earlier, how that like plays into my experience of like mental health, because it can cycle really quickly.
Very
much a yo-yo. Whereas I haven't we've talked, and it doesn't seem like that is a similar experience for you, perhaps. If you want to even talk about that, we can edit this out. But
I think it is an interesting nuance. It's less of a roller coaster. I think 469s dwell. They dwell in the sadness and the indecision. And then they just kind of look in, see if there's anything that can grasp hold of that's going to ease the pain a little bit.
Whereas I think as I've gone older, I've tried to embrace the 7 a little more because the pain is definitely there, the darkness is there. But if I can somehow like do something fun to get me out of that like spiral, that can be really helpful. But I mean, I wasn't aware of the Enneagram when I was younger to know that was even a possibility. I think so. That's what's been helpful for me to kind of get out of like it is helpful to have the 7 not like the dark emotions, because it can motivate me to like to get a little more hopeful or to inspire me to do something,
and it can allow you to understand why you did certain things in the past. Like, oh, I see what I was doing there. I was just trying to lift myself out of that sadness. That's not a bad thing. And you can actually look back at things you've done in the past and go, I can understand why I did that, and kind of pat yourself on the back a bit, rather than lament and criticize ourselves.
Which we are very it's easy for us to do as 4s, I think, to turn inward against ourselves and like take frustrations about things and then make it about like, something's wrong with us, we didn't
I made a huge list of 469 music artists who I could relate to. So there's Amy Lee from Evanescence, which was really interesting because I remember just loving their music so much as a teenager. And when they first came out, they were so popular, it felt like everybody liked them. But then at a certain point, everybody's moving on to other bands, and I'm like, no, I still love Evanescence. And it felt like I suddenly realised I liked them more than everyone else did. And then I was like, well, why do I like them more? And, for me, it wasn't just a fad. It was the lyrics to her songs and the darkness of them, the melancholy, just felt like it was reflecting who I am. And there's such an indecision, and she has a song called Lose Control, which I can really relate to, especially from the 6. Just, wouldn't it be nice just once to lose control? Because the 6 often feels like they need to be checking everything, check that everything is safe, and they don't let themselves go, they don't let their hair down. And I remember Amy Lee talking about how when she first when Evanescence first became famous, she had to go and have lessons of how to be on stage. It didn't come naturally to her to perform, to kind of fist pump, to kind of dance around the stage. It didn't come naturally to her. Her natural instinct is just kind of stand still and worry. So she actually took lessons on just kind of walking around the stage, somebody just helping her to feel confident. And I just remember thinking, oh, that's so nice that she can admit to that, because I couldn't just stand on a stage and walk around and know how to perform, even though I'm a musician. So that was really validating, and just obviously the deep sadness of songs like Breathe No More and My Immortal and Bring Me to Life. How can you see into my eyes like open doors? Again, questions. Sixes ask questions over and over and over, and then the 4 makes them ask big, philosophical, emotional questions. How can you see into my eyes like open doors, leading you down into my core, where I've become so numb? It's just so, like, as a teenager, I think maybe I was the only one that was listening. All my friends just thought, oh, this is cool, heavy rock guitars and the strings, this symphonic rock, this is cool. But I was like, oh, finally some lyrics that relate what I'm feeling like. So everyone else moved on, and second album came out, every song. Third album came out, every song. I'm covering their songs on YouTube. It's like, it meant so much to me. It took on its own life. So yeah, Amy Lee from Evanescence, 469. And one more to mention, I mean, I could mention so many, but one more to mention would be the singer from Korn, Jonathan Davis, who I only discovered recently was a 469. And I've been covering their song called Thoughtless recently, and surprise, surprise, I got to know the song because Amy Lee from Evanescence chose to cover that song. So she obviously related to it from a 469 perspective. And I think this is one that brings in the 9 a little bit more, because the 9s find it difficult to express their anger, but then when they do, it's volatile. And there's this imaginary playing out of anger that helps, because I think 9s just realise, I can't rock the boat, I don't want to make people feel uncomfortable. And so art allows them to express anger. And then when they do, it can seem really aggressive. I think a lot of people would be surprised that, like, the singer from Korn would be a, like, sensitive, quiet, emotional, thoughtful person. Because if you just listen to the song once, you'd probably think, oh, he's a bit angry. And it's just like, no, he's finally, in a careful way, expressing his anger. So, thumbing through the pages of my fantasies, pushing all the mercy down, down, down. I want to see you try and take a swing at me. Come on, I'm going to put you on the ground. Questions. Why are you trying to make fun of me? You think it's funny. What the fuck do you think it's doing to me? You take your turn lashing out at me. I want you crying in front of me. All of my hate cannot be found. I will not be drowned by your thoughtless scheming. So you can try to tear me down, beat me to the ground. I will see you screaming. It sounds so dark, but like, as a teenager and even now as an adult, I just relate to it so much. This finally getting in touch with your anger. All of my hate cannot be found. Like, you have no idea how angry I am. It's like it's been boiling up for so long. And all of these questions, why are you trying to make fun of me? Oh, I feel like it's such a 469 song. And I really, really love covering it.
I think I feel really, it feels great in a way of like, I love that you 469s have created these outlets for the 4s in general. 'Cause even though I'm not a 469, I can still relate to a lot of these songs. I think a little differently than you do, but it's still relevant as a 4 of these like intense emotions that are just kind of bubbling up within us and feeling, especially when I feel down, having the 469 songs in order to like kind of validate my experience. I think that's what's really nice is you 469s create songs that make it feel validating for the rest of us. We're
willing to dig deep down into the emotions.
Yes.
And it's the same, like it takes all types to make the world go round. So exactly the same for me, the 471 songs like Born This Way, I'm like, yeah, we deserve to be loved. And I think it would take a 471 in my life to be like, oh, did you know that there's a march happening? We should go on that. And I'd be like, okay, great. I wouldn't have that drive to go and seek it out myself, but I feel like a 471 or a 714 or a 147 is more likely to, you know, tell me this is happening and you should come. And I'm like, okay, I'll come. And help activate that bit in me that is not necessarily there by default.
Whereas like it's funny, as you were saying that, like a march or something, I think of your song "I Will Never Leave You Behind," whereas I'm sure it was a very personal like experience, and even someone hearing it might think of like a very intimate relationship with someone. Whereas I could see that being blared over speakers at a march, you know, at a LGBTQIA like pride march of just like people proclaiming we're not going to leave you behind, you know, like you all matter, you all are important, you all are beautiful. And so just taking those songs that you all create and just making it relevant to a large group of people.
That's so nice. That's so nice. That's why, like, when songwriters finish writing a song and they release it, they are no longer in control of how it's perceived. And the song has as many meanings as there are people in the world. And I love that. And I feel like people's Enneagram types might be a way of explaining how there are different nuances of relating to the songs as well.
Which makes me think of, sometimes the 4 is named like the hopeless romantic. And so I can at least relate to that in terms of like the hopeless romantic of what the world can look like. So
it doesn't have to be romantic relationships.
Exactly. So a lot of songs,
just
especially
romantic ideals of the world.
Exactly. So like those songs that a lot of 469s have a lot of relationship songs or like maybe even breakup songs. But then I often see it as like a much larger idea of a relationship, of like relationships with people, groups of people, like, you know, on large and, you know, smaller and larger groups of people. Like, how can we all get together? We may have these like times where we have broken up with each other, but how can we like get together? How can we see each other from a different perspective? And it's what I am drawn to. So
that's so nice.
It's
That's
cool.
why it's nice to have these tritypes. I really enjoy it. This has been so much fun. This has been fun. So we'll I'll upload this. See if anybody's interested. Well, even if no one is interested, I think we'll probably end up doing it anyway, because we just find it interesting. But it's nice, hopefully, to have a bit more tritype content out there.
And I guess my hope is that other people would be inspired to like do more of this too. And we may be completely wrong. Like, you know, we may not have the Enneagram theory correct, but I think maybe this is the 471 in me of like hearing each other's stories and like being curators of stories, hearing them, seeing how we're all different, but also have these like themes that connect us all together. I think there's beauty in that, and so we hope other people will be inspired to make more tritype videos or just like be able to kind of see how these tools can be helpful in explaining how we make meaning of this existence.
Absolutely. Cool. Okay, dokes. Well, hopefully see you guys again. Please feel free to leave a comment if you want to add to the conversation.
We'd love to see you.
See you next time.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.